In the previous two presentations, we discussed the meaning of quality education, the elements of quality education, the implementation of quality education. The current presentation is aimed at linking up quality education with the concept of standardization. So, what is standardization, and how is standardization linked with the concept of quality education? This is something that we will briefly discuss. So, first of all, standards. What do we mean by standards in education, and what is the importance of thinking about standards in education? So first of all, standards refer to established criteria or guidelines or benchmarks that define expected knowledge, skills, and attitudes that we are having in our minds with respect to students at specific stages of their education. So what type and what levels of knowledge, skills, and attitudes are expected of students or graduates as a result of a particular educational process is something that we could term as standards. Generally, educational standards are important because they help in structuring curriculum development. It helps in the instructional planning or planning for teaching. These standards help in the designing of the assessment systems, and they are also helpful generally in educational policy making. So as we can see that standards can give the kind of structuring to the whole educational process, right from the policy and planning stage to the implementation and assessment stages. Generally, educational standards ensure consistency, rigor, and quality in quality of the educational process, and these standards also promote equitable learning outcomes for all students. So we can say that standards are quite important in structuring the whole educational process. Now, standards, there are different types of standards that are relevant to the various stages of the educational process. So, for example, at the beginning stage, the standards are termed as input standards, and the examples of input standards include, for example, standards of curriculum, standards of textbooks, standards of the learning environments, the standards of the students in the beginning of an educational process, and standards of infrastructure as an input. So we can see that these are some of the types of input that we get into our education system. Then standards at the process stage actually mean that the standards that we need to have for the process of education or the implementation of education. So examples of these include standards of, for example, pedagogical practices or the teaching practices. Similarly, standards of at the evaluation stage, so evaluation processes or the standards of evaluation processes or examination processes, such as the standards of the kind of questions or the kind of papers that we prepare for our exams. And then standards at the output stage, or we call them output standards. So these include, examples of these include standards of knowledge, skills, attitudes of graduates. So what do we expect our graduates to have in terms of their knowledge and skills and attitudes? That is something that we can consider as standard at the output stage. So now standards in education. So what is the scope of standards in education, or what are the things that we consider when we are thinking about standardizing the educational process? Generally, the scope of standards will encompass the curriculum or textbook or learning experiences. So we need to have certain standards in line with which we develop our curriculum and our textbooks, and in line with which, in the light of which, we develop learning experiences for students. Similarly, there should be standards for learners that we expect from them in the beginning of their learning experience, throughout the learning experience, and towards the end of their learning experiences. Then we need to have standards for teachers in terms of their knowledge, skills, and aptitudes. We need to have standards for educational leaders or perhaps leaders who are running educational institutions or leading educational institutions. So we need to have standards for them in terms of their conduct, in terms of their knowledge, and in terms of their skills. We also need to have standards for the school environment. So what type of environment do we want to have in our schools or in our educational institutions on a broader level? What kind of infrastructure or what minimum requirement of infrastructure and environment do we have? So that is something that we need to have knowledge of. And then standards of assessments and evaluation. So the scope of standards also encompass the standards of assessment. We need to make sure that our assessments are standard, and there are certain benchmarks that they need to fulfill, that evaluation systems are authentic and they are fulfilling those benchmarks. So the scope of these of standards in education include, as we can see, the input, the process, and the output stage of the educational infrastructure. Then standards and quality interaction. So now, how is quality associated with the concept of standards? So generally, as we know that as we already discussed, standards help in improving quality, mainly because, first of all, standards help us in clarity and consistency in educational processes that result in quality education. So standardization, consistency, and clarity in terms of the input of education, in terms of the process of education, and in terms of the outcome or output of education that comes through standards is something that helps in improving the quality of education. Secondly, it helps us in aligning learning goals and learning objectives with learning outcomes. So as we know that all educational process revolves around certain goals and certain objectives. And so if we have standards for those goals and objectives, that will ultimately help us in terms of associating our learning goals and our objectives with our learning outcomes. Thirdly, standards help us in bringing uniformity in evaluation and in ensuring accountability. So again, as we know that authentic evaluation and accountability in the educational process, in the assessment process, brings in better quality as a product of education. So that's why this is something that will help us in developing the quality of education. And lastly, standards are important because standards help us in ensuring equity in curriculum development across the various sections of the society, across different socio-economic classes that we have in the society. If there are standards that we implement in the various systems and subsystems of education, that will help us in the development of a uniform curriculum and also in terms of implementing authentic and better assessment processes. So generally, standardization will help us in bringing more social justice in the form of education, and it will help us in establishing equity in the social order, in the socio-political order in the society.